Now, of course, over the last 2 months, every man and his dog has become very familiar with video conferencing, and there's certainly been a sudden shift towards webinars by pharma companies who've been forced to rethink symposia that they maybe had planned for later in the year. But I actually think that pharma has been missing a trick with webinars for a long time. We should have been doing this years ago. Because webinars are quick, they're easy to set up, and they're certainly very cost effective compared to live events. Also, I think webinars, if they're done in the right way, can deliver a really rich interactive experience. So here are a few of our tips for webinars. So firstly, think about the platform you use. You might want to consider a platform that offers both synchronous and asynchronous communication, because this then allows individuals to either join the live event or they can then participate later when it's most convenient for them. These days, lots of platforms offer features such as polls or surveys and collaboration via discussion threads or kind of chat. So really think about how you want to engage your audience and what interactions you'd like to have with them, and that will help you to decide which platform to use. I'd encourage you all to make sure that any content you create through webinars can last longer and reach further than just the webinar itself. So make sure you do record the event, which then allows you to share it online afterwards. And also think about how you can use that recording either as sharing the whole webinar or maybe breaking it into individual talks. You can also continue the polls afterwards if you've run polls during the event, and you can also continue that discussion. And I would really recommend that if you've had registrants for the webinar, you can then use your permissions to email those registrants when there's things updated about the webinar or when there's new questions or content that's been added. Think about your agenda and your meeting format as well. So in face-to-face meetings, sessions tend to be interspersed with breaks and time for networking. And they also tend to have a range of topics to try and keep the interest levels high for those that are attending the meeting. And I think that virtual meetings really should try and follow that same format. You should look to keep meetings less than 60 minutes so that you can keep people's attention. And then you can always take the discussion offline afterwards. And if you do have a lot of content to cover, think about doing a virtual conference. These can take place over a period of days or weeks, and the content can then be broken down into shorter bite-sized sections. Finally, I think promotion is absolutely key. Use all of your other channels to drive signups like I talked about earlier, so make sure all those channels are integrated. And if it is a key event, you might want to consider using paid digital marketing, and Rob's going to come on and talk about digital marketing in the next session today. So what does the ROI look like for a webinar? Well, again, the cost per attendee for a webinar is typically much lower than the cost of, for example, a rep call. But of course, that does vary depending on how many attendees you achieve and how much you want to spend on marketing the event. We've definitely seen more and more interest in webinars in recent weeks. And the partners that we work with to run webinars are delivering on average at the moment 2 a day for pharmaceutical companies. And the sort of attendance that you can see in this case study here, which was 444 for this particular event, that's pretty typical of the sort of attendances that they're seeing at the moment in pharma sponsored webinars. And I think the great thing about webinars is that they are very measurable. So you will know how long users have spent in the session. You can see how engaged they were depending on the platform you use. And of course, you do get the data from audience polls, which you can then use that to inform your future marketing.